All right, hello and welcome to this build guide for the as of yet unnamed build that uses shield throw and smite and javelin. I don't know, shock throw, lightning. I have no idea. I'll call it something you'll know by the time you've listened to this because it'll be on the title. Anyway, yeah, it's a build that I'm going back to after a long time, quite a long time ago. I played a shield throw build and it was my favorite build, and it was actually the first character I got to level 100, and I haven't gone back to it since. And since that point, a lot has actually changed for the better. The old build was not very good with single target, but because of Javelin and the ability to use lightning and shock and lightning shred at the same time, single target has gotten much better. So I've decided to redesign it, and this is what I've come up with. It's performing very well, and I want to show you guys today. So we're going to go ahead and do a quick echo. This is 125 corruption. That is just because that's as far as I've gotten. It certainly has nothing to do with how far it can actually go. I believe this is probably going to be in that realm of can do 500 corruption with good gear. So, and do it as a farm, or at least close to it. So let's go ahead and get into one of these echoes, and I'll show you guys what it's all about, and then we'll get into the pros and the cons from there. Okay, let's go ahead and get our sigils up, and then this build is very quick because it uses shield rush. Great effects. And the nice thing about it is we haven't had to spec for shield rush, so we've been able to use that slot for other things. All right, let's get to a decent little pack or something. Here we go. Put down a javelin here. This will just die even faster. Javelin just really helps with single target. I mean, it helps with AoE too, but it's not necessary for AoE because it kills so quickly with just shield throw itself. It's just a mana expense at that point. Might as well just save it for shield rush. A lot of shield skills in this particular build. Hard to keep track of all of them. All right, gonna get there now. I went the wrong way, otherwise this has been a long time ago. Okay. Alright, let's just go to the end here. We don't have to worry about it. Feels also really tanky. So the closest comparison, I'm gonna actually wait for me just to show what kind of single target it can do. There we go. And he's actually alive now, he's not. The closest comparison this build has is gonna be the hammer throw build, where it smite procs and does an orbital. So that build is really good, but one thing this build has on it, got a couple of things, but one in particular that it has on it is it can build a ton of armor. In fact, let me show you that before we get out of here. I'm just gonna put up get a couple of enemies around, pull up my armor sheet and show you guys what it can do for armor. Okay, here we go. And that's not even a very good example. We only got a 5,700 armor there. This can get to about 10k as is, which is definitely not finished. So and it does that with very little investment. I don't even have on a Throne of Ambition right now, and I probably won't because that would take up a chance to cast Smite, and I'm just using the Armory Aegis node for most of the armor that I'm getting. So we can push the armor further if we wanted to, but that is handled pretty easily just through that node, and we're wearing a shield too, which makes us even tankier. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get into the pros and cons because it's a good lead-in. First pro is it's got good AoE, like really good AoE. You can see on that fight, once we got density, things just died almost immediately. You'll get that anytime. Like, it's just stuff does not survive shield throw itself. If you happen to want to put javelin down, even better, but it doesn't need it at all. It's going to kill stuff pretty much just as soon as you press a couple of shield throws. Single target is actually good because of javelin. We can throw down a javelin, and then we can shield throw on top of that and get a lot of smite procs from that on a single target enemy. We have multiple shred from shock and from lightning shred. So boss enemies do die within a reasonable speed. And because you're so tanky, you can actually stand in some of the mechanics and not really worry about dying. So that gives you just more time on the boss, which will cause them to die quicker. So that's good too. It's also, as mentioned, very tanky. The armor and the block, just those two things alone make it so tanky that there's not a whole lot more investment that needs to be put into it. So I have 74% block chance without sigils. I put sigils on, and I'm going to be at 86% with 54% block effectiveness, which means 86% of the time I reduce the damage of hits by 54% just from that. That doesn't include armor. We're sitting at 49% now. Do bear in mind I'm at level 87, so it's a little bit lower than that 100, but that's without using our armoring Aegis at all, which is going to give us 200 every time it ricochets, and that does stack, which you could see on that that fight. So we'll be at, once this build is actually where it needs to be gear wise and level wise, we'll be at 10k pretty consistently in any challenging fights. So 10k armor, 85% block chance with 51% effectiveness. That alone is going to keep you alive under most things. And then you can of course add on to that more health. I don't have that much health right now in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, 500 corruption, I don't think will be a problem at all for it. Another pro is it's fast. It uses shield rush. Shield rush is, in my opinion, the most underrated movement skill in the game. If you use it well, you will get through maps very, very quickly. And it doesn't even have to spec it, so we get to actually use 6 skills. We have Smite on our bar, which is our primary damage dealer. So that just makes things even easier. Okay, let's talk about cons. There's really only 2 that I can think of at least. One, it requires investment into chance to cast Smite idols from throwing attacks. You're going to need 4 of these, at least eventually, to get this build to work properly. So this is not really new player friendly just for that reason. You're going to have to get the idols before you can really run the build. So you're going to want to run something else to start with and then come to this once you get the idols figured out. The other con is you have to manage the mana a little bit. It's not really a big deal. It's just we don't have a generator. So you do want some mana regen on your gear. And as you're running around with Shield Rush, you're going to eventually go into the negative, which means you'll have to wait a little bit maybe to cast a Javelin or a Holy Aura, or if you need to cast Sigils to cast that. But it's not really that big of a deal. You saw how I ran through that. I hit negative. I just waited a second. Then I hit Javelin. Then I kept going. The great thing is that Shield Throw itself doesn't cost any mana. So when you're Shield Throwing, you are also regenning mana without any issues. So that's a really minor thing to me. It's not necessarily unnoticeable, but it's not that big of a deal. And there are ways to help mitigate that. Build more mana regen than I have. I don't have all that much. I have good mana regen here. I have none here. I have none here, and I have a small amount here. And I have a little bit here. Let's see, it's tier 4. Could be a tier 5 or tier 6 or tier 7. So I could add a lot more mana regen just through those. And further help to mitigate that problem if I really found it to be annoying. But right now I find the damage improvements to be more worth it. All right, that's the pros and the cons. Let's talk about skill level, which we pretty much covered because you need the Smite idols. So it's not really a skill, it's more of an experience thing. You have to just have these to make the build work. If you don't have them, it's not going to work. So you've got to wait to use those. So not new player friendly for that reason. As far as the rotation, you have to manage sigils, but sigils should be up mostly just from getting Last Wish to proc on kill. But there are times when you'll have to manually cast it. You're going to want to cast Holy Aura whenever you're in a fight, basically, when it's on cooldown, because it's going to significantly increase your attack speed, along with other benefits. And you do have to use Javelin to do more damage, but it's just a damage dealer. So it's not really that complicated. Sigils, I think, is going to be the big one for most people. Either you can deal with the fact that you'll sometimes have to cast sigils. You'll have to cast sigils. That's hard to say. You will deal with having to cast sigils, or you'll just be like, no, I don't want to. It's annoying, and which I totally understand. But I think because of the cast on kill, it's not that annoying. It's not that big a deal. I usually overcast it myself. I just use it from time to time when I have mana, and it's capped all the time with that. But if you're okay with using sigils and having to cast it every once in a while, the rotation's fine. As far as changes in the future, I've been expecting a patch to nerf Armoring Aegis for like 2 years now. Well, maybe like a year and a half. And it hasn't happened still. So I don't know what to say about that at this point. Like, it's really, really, really strong. And it may just stay like that, which is fine. Like, the build's not like so far anymore into, like, it used to be shield throw because this was super, super OP. Other things have kind of caught it in different areas, or the community's just not playing it as much. I'm not sure which, but you can make a 500 weight build out of shield throw largely because of this node itself. This is the only one I see really potentially getting nerfed. I mean, maybe the smite stuff. Like, smite is so heavily used right now in Sentinel that they could do something about it, but I think they really like having a skill that's like truly a mostly proc skill. So I don't really foresee any major nerfs to this in the future, like next patch or two, but it's in the realm of good enough to where you never know. But I'm not too worried about it. There's nothing here that's OP. There's nothing here that's so obviously broken, like EQ Werebear, that I'm like, that's probably going to get nerfed. So I think you're okay to play this and probably be fine in the next patch or two, but you just never know. All right, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get on to the actual build, starting with the skills and specs. All right, so skills and specs, but before we do this, one thing I forgot to mention in the pros and cons, the pros particularly, is it's got good CC. It stuns things really well because of the shock. So a lot of the enemies won't even get a chance to attack you, which just makes it, of course, even harder to kill. So that's a really good pro. Okay, let's start with shield throw. So there's really two branches of here that matter the most. The first one you're going to need to do is this bottom one for polished steel, for the mana cost, focused campaign, and then shield barrage. This allows you to have no cooldown on it and use it, well, as a spam skill. You have to have that. The other one is armoring Aegis, which we talked about earlier, which gives you the crazy amounts of armor on ricochet. Those are going to be the two primary things, but then might as well add in some damage. So we'll take ricochet here, which will give us some attack speed and a ricochet. We'll take eruption, which creates a spell attack. It's a fire spell attack, so it's not perfectly synergistic, but it does decent damage. And then we're going to throw on hit damage on that, as well as area. So that will give you actually some extra clear damage. It is worth taking. There's nothing else in here that really is. I mean, if you really want to go crazy, you could go Ironmonger for even more armor, but you get so much from this, it seems kind of unnecessary. The other option would be Fleet of Foot to go move a little bit faster, but also not really necessary when you have Shield Rush. So I recommend going this direction, just getting the extra spell damage. All right, Javelin, the second of the skills that are going to proc Smite, Smite being the primary damage dealer, which we'll get to next. We're going to have to go all the way up through this right-hand side to get to the Smite procs. So we'll start with Mighty Delivery, and then we'll go to Burning Strength, which is an unfortunate one because we don't care about Ignite, but you have to take it. Then to Siege Barrage and Battle Snare. This will create the Battle Snare on the ground so that you will be able to have this big circle, which you can kill enemies in. From there, we are going to go into Ardent Symbol. You're going to need at least 1 point here to start with to get increased duration, which will allow you to get Divine Intervention finally, which allows you to cast Smite in the Battle Standard. And then you want 5 of 5 in Righteous Descend, which will give you more frequency and a base crit on it. Along with that, we're going to go ahead and take Capture the Flag, which will allow moving enemies to basically grab the flag. Why they would want to do that, I don't know, but they will. And they'll move around with it so that if you cast it on an enemy and it happens to be fast or moving out of your way, it will take it with it and keep getting damage and damage others along the way. We'll also want 5 of 5 in Banner of Restoration, which is going to be a significant heal just for standing in it. It's just a nice little extra. There's no damage you need in Javelin, so might as well take this. After that, I've taken a couple in Ardent Symbol to increase the duration, and I have taken 1 in Mighty Delivery. Whether you take 1 in Mighty Delivery for a little bit more attack speed, or 4 in Ardent Symbol is more or less flavor, depending on playstyle, which one you'd rather have. So you can go either way on that one. All right, the star of the show is Smite as far as damage goes. This is how I have built it. So the first thing I want to do is I want to turn it into lightning. So I need 1 in Blinding Flash, 2 in Piety, 1 in Order of Lagan, which does turn it into lightning. I've also taken Unbalanced Scale, which allows it to cast lightning bolts at 3 targets. This is really good for AoE. I definitely do recommend it, although it's not necessary. It is good to hit multiple targets every time you smite. From there, we're going to go down and do all the damage stuff. We've got 5 of 5 in Sacrifice. This is a huge damage buff, 250% more damage multiplier, but it does consume health every time you hit. So you're going to want to take 4 of 5 in Atonement to significantly decrease that health cost. We're also going to take 5 of 5 in conviction for the base crit chance. We don't care about the minus cast speed because we don't cast it directly. And then I've got 2 of 4 in crit multi. This is a 22 build, so you're going to want to have +2 to get all of these things. If you have 23 or 24, you can put them in either the crit multi here, or you can put them in blinding flash for the increased damage, or the increased crit multiplier, or the more damage on blind. All right, moving on to the 2 support skills. We have, first off, Sigils of Hope. First thing you want to do to make it less annoying, 4 of 5 in empowering sigils to get Last Wish, so you can actually cast them on kills, so you don't have to refresh them quite as often. I do recommend 2 in World of Alacrity for cast speed, so that they cast quicker. You can take Exigency, which I have used most of the time. I just actually moved out of it very recently, just to make it so you don't actually have to stop doing it even when you are casting Shield Throw. If you do that, take 1 out of Iron Sigils or 1 out of Enduring Hope. I'd probably take it out of Iron Sigils. I decided I want a little bit more armor, so I made that switch, but either one will work. Then I've got the 5 of 5 in Enduring Hope, 1 more Maximum Sigil here, Meditation, and 3 of 3 in Sign of the Guardian to get that additional block chance per active sigil. We have 4, so we'll have 12 block chance just from this, 12%. The last one is Holy Aura. This is just a great all-around skill. Really hard not to have it as a paladin because it's so good. In fact, it is the capstone mastery skill. So we're going to go ahead and do mostly for damage here because we don't really need the defense. So we've got 2 in Call to Arms. Unfortunately, we don't really have any benefit out of that because we don't do any fizz damage, but that's what we have to do to get it. 2 Fanaticism, which gives us 16% attack speed, and True Strike gives us 40% crit chance. Then we're going to take 2 in Strength from Afar, which is almost as useless as Call to Arms, except it does add some throwing attack damage, and you do technically throwing attack, even though all of your damage is coming basically from spells. It's unfortunate because you really want to get to Expedite to get that throwing attack speed, and the haste chance is nice as well. So we're going to have to take 4 useless points, but we get a lot out of it. We get 32% attack speed, chance to get haste, and 40% crit chance. After that, we'll finish up with Shelter from the Storm. Going to give us 12% endurance and 20% elemental resistance. That resistance will stack with the 15% we're going to get just from having Holy Aura. We're going to get 35% elemental resistance just from Holy Aura and 12% endurance. So yeah, good defense and good offense from a skill that you only have to use if you want to once every like 10 seconds, and then it's an instant cast. Pretty good. All right, that's it for the skills and specs. Let's move on to the passives. And as always, we will start with the base Sentinel class. So we're going to take 8 of 8 in Juggernaut. It's got fire resistance, it's got void resistance, it's got strength. You can't go wrong with this one. We're going to take 1 in Fearless to give us 1 in Gladiator. This is just for the block chance. The block effectiveness is nice, but 30 block effectiveness per point is not really that good. So we just want that block chance. 5 of 5 in Armor Clad gives us 75 armor and minus 10 damage, 10% damage taken from nearby enemies. And then 5 of 5 in Valiant Charge, mostly for the movement skill cooldown recovery, but 35 health is nice too. This is going to allow us to use Shield Rush more often. Next, we're going to want 5 points in Forge Guard to get Shield Throw going. We're just going to take Steel Aegis, 250 block effectiveness, 2% block chance. Perfect. Everything else in here is not that great. We're not going to worry about it. We are going to take points in Abyssal Endurance. Scale this as needed because it's Void and Fizz Res. If you're super overcapped on that, you might want to spend points elsewhere. This is a nice flexible node that you can use whenever you need to for your Void Fizz. And of course, it gives health as well, which is always great. Okay, the rest of the points go into Paladin. So we've got 1 point in Honor for that block chance again. It's also going to open up Heaven Fire for the adaptive spell damage with the shield. We obviously really want that because we love spell damage because we're a spell-based build. Plus 30 is amazing. 8 of 8 in Conviction will give us lightning damage and lightning pen. 7 of 7 in Holy Symbols, necrotic resistance, health, and healing effectiveness. All useful for us because we do have some healing. The health and necrotic resistance are excellent. We're going to take 8 of 8 in Sanctuary's Sanctuary Guardian. Armor while with a shield plus 400. And 16 adaptive spell damage with the shield. And we'll take the 1 of 1 in Shield Wall since we're not going to dodge anyway. Let's get the 5% block chance. And 10 health gained on block. We're definitely going to want 10 of 10 in Holy Precision because it's going to give us 200% increased spell crit chance along with 100% crit multi for lightning skills, which just makes it even better to go lightning than it already was with shock. So that's a big win for us. 1 of 8 in Faith Armor. We don't need a lot of armor or crit avoidance in this build, so we'll just take the 1. We're going to take 12 of 12 in Prayer Aegis for the health and the endurance threshold. The haste on heal is fine, whatever, but we really want the health and endurance threshold. And then 12 of 12 in Light of Rhea for a big chunk of lightning damage and 12% move speed. That is the passives, nice and simple. Let's move on to the gearing. All right, let's start with the base gear over here. So there's not a lot that you need, as far as there's only one unique you can see on the build. This build is mostly crafted items, but there are a lot of things I've sealed, and I'll go over why that is in a second, because there's just a lot of extra power you can get from sealing affixes that aren't super important to get higher than tier 1. So bear that in mind. They're not needed, but I'm gonna explain exactly what you should do in cases where you don't have them sealed. Okay, let's start with the body armor and helmet, since those are class specific things. So on the Solarum plate, we've got crit avoidance as our base. You definitely want that if you can get it. Vitality, increased health are great. You're gonna want as much health as you can get. I've got the void damage taken as physical here. Now, it's a weird one to put on. A lot of people don't use these for generally good reasons. The reason I've got it on here is because A, there are just no really good prefixes for this build at all. There's nothing lightning based. A bunch of throwing attack stuff that you don't care about because you're not actually using throwing attacks to do the damage. You're using a spell to do your damage. Could get strength for armor if you want to do that, but other than that, there's not much here. If we convert over half of our void damage to physical, approximately half though, then the amount of damage reduction we get from armor is higher. So that's why we've got this here. It's not needed at all. In fact, I would say that's the least important of these affixes, but if you can get it, then it will cause you to take less damage from void, just due to the fact that armor does more for physical than it does for void. On helmet, we've got increased CDR. That's going to be good for 3 of our skills, basically. It's going to, well, 4 of our skills. It's going to be good for everything but shield throw. And it's definitely gonna help us move around a little bit faster. We got the crit avoidance base on here. We got vitality, increased health as basically we had on the body armor. All right, let's go to the weapon. So the weapon, you have some flexibility here, but I prefer spell, lightning damage, and leech. You could also go with spell damage here, lightning damage, that'd be fine. Increased spell crit. There's gonna be a lot of crit in this gear here. If you're willing to do the hand calculation to find out when you get to 100% crit on smite, at that point you can stop putting on crit and replace that with other things. But until you have that, spell crit here is a really powerful option. Chance to shock is great on this build. Chance to chill is always good. And I've got sealed a tier 1 chance to slow. It'll just give you some space between you and the enemy. It's not really important because you're so tanky, but it's just another layer of defense if you do happen to get a tier 1 you can seal on there. And also the Obsidian Scepter's got the highest adaptive spell damage, so that's why we're going with that. And Scepters are also just really good options because they have all the affixes we want, including the lightning damage, leeched as health, which the wand does not have. As far as the shield, Iron Glass has the highest block chance, so that's why we're going to that. We've got, of course, a tier 5 block chance on here. If you can get a tier 7, amazing. Block effectiveness, tier 5, reduced damage taken on block, and I've also got elemental resistance in here just to fit it in somewhere on the gear. This is a good spot to just put that, or all resists, or really whatever you want there. You can put armor there, you can put health there. That's a kind of a wild card spot to put whatever you'd like. Onto the amulet. Bone amulet's got the good resistance. We like that. Crit multi, spell crit, chance to shred armor is awesome. Chance to shock is awesome. Now, some people will be asking, why didn't you take the unique here? Devotion. Why didn't you take devotion on here? And so the answer to that is the damage I gained for the mana management that I had to endure just didn't seem worth it. The damage wasn't all that much better to a really good like shred shock crit multi amulet, and so ultimately I decided the bone amulet was just better, both for quality of life and just, again, the benefit wasn't that high. And being able to put Fizz Necrotic here was really good, so I decided I did not need devotion. It just wasn't worth my time. All right, let's move on to rings. I like move speed here. You can put other stuff there if you need it, but move speed is always nice just to get around the echoes faster. So we've got throwing attack speed and mana regen as our prefixes, but we also seal a tier 1 throwing fizz damage. Why are we doing that? Because the minus throwing mana cost is all we care about here. Well, all we need to do is get to the minus or to 0 throwing mana cost on shield throw. So you're going to prioritize this affix, throwing fizz damage minus throwing mana cost, on your rings until you get to 0, and you're going to try to seal them if you can, because it has no other benefit to you Throwing Viz damage is useless. Getting higher tiers in this is just not needed. You don't need it at all. You'd much rather have throwing attack speed and mana regen if you can get it. So try to seal that off. Crit avoidance on one of your rings. Block chance on both of your rings. Try to get as high on the block chance you can. You can also put health here or resistance if you need it. As far as the belt, I have sealed a cleanse on potion use. That's another fix. You just don't need anything more than tier 1 because it cleanses on tier 1. So if you can put that there, awesome. And that gives you space for both mana regen and lightning damage. If not, you can just put it in there instead of like lightning damage or mana regen if you feel like you have enough mana. But yeah, relatively easy to seal, which is nice to put there. And then increased health and hybrid health in the suffixes. The relic is where we're going to get our +2 or higher to smite. We definitely want that. You also get a block chance base on here, which is awesome. Increased mana regen, health, and here's where we're putting our frailty. And you can do some sort of, I think shock can go here. I can't remember. If not, then definitely put it here. We're getting shock and shred armor up here, which is why we're putting frailty down on the relic. The gloves increase throwing attack speed, increase critical strike chance. Crit gloves if you need them. Otherwise, you can switch to void or necrotic resistance or even endurance as your base. Block chance and hybrid health. Now, the only unique we have in here, Stormtide. You don't really need this if you've got good shock on your scepter and you have good shock on your amulet. Remember, you can only get 20 stacks of shock, so this will be overkill, and it only affects on lightning hit, so it only affects smite. You won't be getting shocks from this on your shield throw attack, so it only has some. It has a lot of effect on it because you do smite a lot, but it's not as effective as other sources of universal shock. So you can remove these if you got the other 2 shock. Of course, if you have a tier 6 or tier 7 move speed in here, you might want to keep it anyway. That's up to you. Definitely don't need Stormtide, though, if you have other sources of shock on your gear. All right, let's move on to the blessings. So we have Grand Hunger of the Void. Awesome spell damage, leeches health. You're going to be doing a lot of spell damage, and so getting leech here is going to be great. Grand Mysteries of the Deep for that shred lightning. This is also awesome. It's on hit, so you will get to 20 stacks, just like you will shock. So you'll have 40 total stacks of effectively shred lightning resistance, which is why lightning is so good right now. All resist here because we don't need the crit avoidance because we're getting it from our body armor, our helmet, and 1 ring. Grand Bones of Eternity for block effectiveness, and because we don't need armor, we might as well take Grand Embers of Immortality for the additional endurance to get closer to the endurance cap. Finally, idols, which are super important. You're going to want 4 chance to cast smite on hit with throwing attack as high as you can roll. If you get 4/9, that's awesome. That's 36% chance to smite every time you use shield throw. That will be, believe me, more than enough to keep you going. If you get a little less, then that's fine too. As far as your suffixes, you can put either shred armor here or block effectiveness. Probably some combination of the 2 would be great. Your 1x1s can be whatever you want. I've got mana and health in here. It can be armor. It can be resistances if you need them. They're completely wild cards for you to put whatever you like there. All right, that is the gear. Let's move on to the rotation, and then we'll be done with the build guide. The rotation for this build is a little more complicated than maybe my average, but still not complicated at all because I don't really like super complicated builds. So you're going to want to probably get up your sigils at the beginning. So just cast it 4 times. It's going to drop your mana a bit, but don't worry too much about it. Your mana regen should be good enough. From there, you can just shield rush to wherever it is you want to get to, which is probably the objective. Just keep doing that. You're going to run low in mana. Don't worry too much about it. Once you get there, you can make sure you have your sigils topped off. You can start to attack. You can hit Holy Aura to do further damage, and if you have a good pack here or a even better meaty enemy with a lot of HP or a lot of DR, basically a boss or a yellow, you can also drop in Javelin there to add additional smites so that you're getting basically double smites between shield throw and between a Javelin. So that's going to be plenty of damage on a single target enemy, and honestly everything else is probably going to die just from shield throw, but you can use Javelin liberally if you'd like to. It doesn't really cost much mana. It's only an 18 mana cost, and this character has 150 mana, so it's not really going to make much of a difference. But you can see once you stop shield rushing around, like, your mana is not an issue anymore. It's perfectly fine. Shield rush is the only thing that costs a lot of mana. And once you get there, you just wait for your mana to start to regen, and you'll be good to go. So yeah, pretty easy rotation overall. Fun to play. Looks pretty. Just love the look of the lightning skills in this game. So yeah, all right, that will cover the build guide. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great time with this build. if you would like to join me as I make builds and just do Last Epoch content and other content. We're going to be doing a lot of other content the next few weeks with PoE, League, and Lost Ark. If you'd like to join me on that, I do stream 5 to 6 days a week on Twitch. Would love to have you there. Also have a Discord if you'd like to join us there. And thank you again to my Patreon supporters. Once again, I failed you and do not have the thank you supporter page up, but I will try to get on that soonish. If you'd like to also be a Patreon supporter and help me make these builds and continue to provide content basically every day, both through Twitch and through YouTube, would really appreciate any support that you all would like to provide. All right, that will do it. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great time in Last Epoch, and I will see you all again real soon.